Welcome back to the Passport Podcast, your audio ticket to sport around the world. We're back for episode 2, and I'm super excited to welcome Ashleigh Plumptre. Asheligh is a football player who has seen success globally, both on and off the pitch. On the pitch, her accomplishments speak for themselves, including, but not limited to, an NCAA national championship and winning the 2025 Women's Africa Cup of Nations tournament with the Nigerian Super Falcons. However, while we talked about what Ash has done on the pitch, we're also doing deep dive into the work that she's doing off of it. Because while we see a lot in the news of what's going on during the game, we don't see a lot of the work that's covered outside of that. Outside of football, Ashleigh's dedicated to using her platform to uplift conversations and the voices of people that she believes in. In this episode, we touched on where it all began for her in football, her time in the American college system, playing for Nigeria, and of course, her work outside of football, how she's using her platform for good to speak about things that she cares about, and much, much more. You'll leave feeling inspired, as Ashleigh is an example of what it means to leave a legacy and to create a better world for the next generation. So get ready. This is Ashleigh Plumptre on the Passport Podcast. Yeah. Right. Welcome back to the Passport Podcast. This is Lyndon Moore, your host. I'm very excited. We're back for episode 2 today, and I have the incredible Ashleigh Plumptre. So welcome, Ashleigh. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
One of the things that this show aims to do is talking about not only your experience on the field, but also off the field. So we're going to be getting into a bunch of that. But one of the things that I think to start us off is wind us back in time, because everybody starts somewhere. And so football is something that's a big part of your life. And so if you could just take us back to the beginning of how and when you started, and then kind of who inspired you along the way.
Yeah, so I started playing, well, it's funny because I've been playing that long, I don't even remember when I started, but I started playing for a team, like a girls' team, at 4 years old. So I've always played football, but I was one of those kids that, like my mum would always say that I was one of those kids that had either a ball at my feet or in my hands, like at all times. Like I just loved every sport, and it wasn't like football when it was necessarily my favourite. it ended up being one of the sports that I just picked up quite easily when I was young. Like had a level of talent within it. But like I said, I just wanted to run and chase a ball or throw a ball or something like that. And my mum was saying my mum and dad were like, I think from 3, I was like kicking a ball around. So obviously like very, very young. And then when I was 4, I started, like just playing around, like probably just playing with my family or whatever. But then I joined a local girls team. So funnily enough, like at that time, like when I was young, so this was, over 20, it's the first I forget how old I am, 27, so this is like over 20 years ago. There wasn't many like female like or girls teams. Like a lot of the girls that I grew up with, they had to play, when they first started, they had to play with boys. And some of them, to be honest, it was like a preference. They wanted to play with boys because the game was faster, they had to be stronger and all that stuff. But for me, I actually had access to a local girls team from the very beginning. So yeah, I was there at like a Sunday league, like grassroots team, until I got an invite for academy trials. So Centre of Excellence, it was called, at Leicester. And that was when I was 8. And then I ended up being at Leicester from 8 years old till I think I was around 14. This is where I always forget because all the years roll into one, but my dad knows that I was there, from 8 to 14. And then at that point, I was going into soon I was going to go into GCSE years and exams and things. So I wanted to be somewhere where, like with Leicester, actually before that, like at Leicester, I was doing well. But then at 14, I started to break into the England setup. So I broke up into the under 15s. So at that point, I wanted to challenge myself more and be on a team that could challenge me more than what it was. So I moved to Birmingham City. But then because Birmingham was far and I was about to do my GCSEs, I was only there for about a year. And then after that year, I wanted to, it was hard because I always say that football and school, they're always hand in hand. Like not one was more important than the other. So then I moved to a closer team, which was Derby, which weren't from a talent perspective, they weren't as good as Birmingham, but it was good for me because I could get back from training and study. And then, but at 16, I went to Notts County, who were in the WSL. Obviously, they no longer exist anymore. But I got to be in Notts County where it was close to me, but I was also challenged because I was playing with like senior international players. So that's like my journey up until I went to the US, but started at 4 and now at 27 somehow still playing because I never expected that I would, but here I am.
Wow. What I find so fascinating about that is you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket in terms of just the football. You're thinking outwards as well about other aspects of your life. And I mean, there's so much in that. And I think, you know, especially here in England, because football is so big, I think now, especially because we're seeing, I think England's done very well, especially the Lionesses. We're seeing the England setups become more and more competitive, which is great because that means there's a ton of talent, but you've also got to think, okay, besides that, what's gonna serve me, because you never know, and unfortunately is you don't know when your career might finish. You know, you were talking about the mixed teams, you know, growing up and then playing maybe on an all girls team, and it's interesting that you say that some girls have the preference that they want to play mixed because they want to get that experience, which I can totally see. And it's, you know, I think we're seeing more and more now in the media. Then go back to the Lionesses for a second, that, you know, so a lot of them had to grow up playing with boys because they didn't have an option. But because, you know, you did have that option to go to a girls team, not everyone else will. At the time when you were doing all of that, were you able to watch and consume women's football, like the senior national team or other WSL?
Yeah, funny enough, the one game that's just come to my mind is because my family and I, we've always been, especially on my dad's side, we've been like Arsenal. Like I supported Leicester and Arsenal growing up. So when I was like fascinated by women's football and obviously being very young, I always supported Arsenal, men's and women's. Was fascinated by Arsenal, and then from the women's perspective, it was always because when I was young, it wasn't until I was 19, I think I then became a defender. But my whole career, I've played as a winger or like left midfield, which still baffles me to this day. I'm like, I can't even. I would love to see like clips of me playing when I was a winger or a midfielder, because I'm like, I don't even know what I would have done. Surely I would have just like kicked the ball forward and ran, because I'm not necessarily agile. So I don't know how I managed to break into like the England youth teams as a winger. Yeah, no idea. But I used to love Rachel Yankee. So I had a Arsenal shirt with number 11 Yankee on the back. I always remember, I think Arsenal were playing Birmingham, because that's when Birmingham, you know, were a big powerhouse at the time. It must have been a cup game or something, and she scored like an incredible goal. I don't even remember it fully. I just remember being there, watching her, being in awe of her. And I'm not somebody, even when I was younger, I was not like starstruck. I've never really been starstruck by anyone, because even when I was young, I've always just seen people as people. Like, but yes, people can have different levels of success or achievements, but ultimately I just think we're all like, at our core, we're all the same. So anyway, like I was like, you know, love the team, whatever, but Rachel Yankee just stood out to me. And I think as well, because it's interesting, because I always, even though I've come across many people as looking white, I've always been and identified as being mixed race. So I think as well, just seeing like a player of her caliber, her level of like humility, like she was so good, but she's so like softly spoken, doesn't really, you know, she's not in the media so much, even back then, but just worked so hard, was so good at what she did, and was a very good player of a mixed race heritage at the time. It's just somebody that I was naturally drawn to. Not that somebody was like introduced me to this person. I just ended up gravitating towards her, which was quite nice. And then the same was for the national team. So at 14, that's when I knew I wanted to go and play in the US. Like I was always drawn to the US women's national team when I was younger, always. And I think because like I always saw myself as an athlete before a footballer, because like I said, I grew up and I loved every sport, so I didn't see myself just as a footballer. I loved all sports, and I liked that in the US mentality it was about being an athlete first. And then even I started to look into where these like US women's national team players went to college, and then I would be on like my laptop or like this is a teenager when I'm meant to be studying, I was looking like, where did they go to college? What was a college like? Even like images of the facilities at the colleges. And then I have family in California, and then I started going out every summer, and I'd stay with my uncle and his family, and I would visit different universities. And my dream initially was UCLA because it was just that star-studded school. And then I went and visited it, and I was like, you know what, this isn't me. Because I've come from a background, to be honest, where everything's been, it's not necessarily been like given. I've had to work pretty hard. I know I've been given like many opportunities that many, like now, my current like national team teammates with Nigeria didn't get what I, compared to what I got when I was playing through the youth ranks in England. But I did work, and it was off my own back really, but I worked very hard doing extra stuff when I was young. Like, I would always say that my training when I was a teenager is probably harder than what it is now. So I've become accustomed to like being able to push myself through pain, necessarily, kind of like physical and not emotional pain, that's a bit dramatic, but like very like physical pain from like trying to be a better athlete. I was accustomed to that when I was a kid because I trained a lot with my dad. So then, yeah, I attributed that to the US mentality. It was like, go hard or go home. And I was very much like that. And then, yeah, I just was obsessed with that side of things. And then I knew from 14 I was going to work towards trying to get a scholarship in the US.
That is such a cool story, and thank you for sharing that. Shout out to Rachel Yankee because she is
Yeah.
a legend, and you're right. Like she does tend to stay a little bit more out of the media, and so we don't see maybe as much of her. But she deserves all of the flowers. And hearing other interviews with English football players, they talk about Rachel being a huge inspiration, and she just seems so humble, just electric on the pitch. And then her legacy is going to continue to live off that, even though I know she's still in the football world in some way. And then also just, I want to say something too about the resilience, because
Mhm.
I feel like that's so much of being an athlete is getting back up when you don't want to,
Yeah.
and the losses and the lessons that come with that. That's just part of life. But it's you know whether you have somebody who's able to help you, maybe guide you through that, or do you have your own? Everyone's situation is going to be different, but it was really, fascinating to hear kind of that backstory for you. And so you jumped ahead of me a little bit. You are really smart. No, 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 this is great. Like it segues perfectly. So it's like you read my mind. Talking about NCAA national champion at USC. When I say that,
Yeah.
how does that feel?
I still, do you know what? I still can't believe that happened. I genuinely, because I went to the US knowing, like I said, from 14, I might have even been 13. Like I had this like crazy, weird obsession with the US like college system, the US mentality. Um, so like to be able to go to USC, which was a school that, like I said, UCLA was always my dream. But then I went and visited, and I was like, this doesn't feel like me because it was very much a star-studded school where I was a little bit like where I've been brought up. It's a bit more rough around the edges, and USC is obviously it's a private school. It's a very prestigious school, but the area that it's in felt more like me. Like if you, as soon as you step outside of USC, it's a little bit rough and whatever. It's very like I don't know how to describe it, but it's not the same area as UCLA. Completely different areas of LA.
South Central
And
is
I
very
love
different.
that. Yes. And I really like that because that's kind of like, I don't know, I grew up playing football like just across the road on the like grass with my friends. Like I was just out playing as a kid. I was like, I'd wear the same play clothes like all week. I remember just being like such a dirty kid kind of thing. And I just like loved playing on the street. So like when I would be, yes, USC is a beautiful school. As soon as you step out, it's kind of like, in some ways, like, yeah, it's that like edginess that I was accustomed to. So yeah, I ended up going to USC, which was like a dream of mine. And then I go, I'm getting accustomed to like completely different like education system, completely different style of football, like completely different people. And I've gone out there alone. And honestly, the first few months were so hard for me. Like I don't know how I managed to like get accustomed to everything, because it's like I was really thrown in at the deep end. And because I'm such like a high performer in everything, I was so hard on myself, because there were some classes that I just like I wasn't good at, and I don't like being bad at something. So I was like trying to get on top of school. I was trying to be able to catch up to some of these players on the national on my college team. Obviously I was a freshman, so I was coming in a lot younger than some of the seniors, who all those pretty much that whole senior class I was with when I joined in 2016, all of them were, I think, pretty much all of them got drafted. So they were all like very high level players, and I just felt so out of my depths. And that's with playing at Notts County beforehand, but I still felt, and I really struggled with confidence. I was so hard on myself all of the time. But I actually, in those first couple months, I got a concussion, so I had to sit out for like 2 weeks or so. And then as soon as I came back after that concussion, like all I needed is a time just to be able to breathe and be like, Ash, it's not as overwhelming as what you're making it out to be. So I just sat on the sideline and just watched everything. I was really taking note of like how people were playing, what the style of play was, and then when I came back after that concussion, that's when we got into the season. Then we went into the postseason, and we were like, I think our first game, I think it was the first round of that NCAA tournament. If I remember correctly, it was like a really tight game in the first round. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we're expected to do pretty well. Like we were not expected to win the national championship, but we were expected to get further than the first round. And then, yeah, we get past the first round, and then everything just keeps like, somehow everything's kind of like, not even on our side, but things were clicking at the perfect moments. And then there was this belief from the senior class that, it's funny because I've actually never spoken about this before, so it's nice to be able to like reminisce on it, even though I was so intimidated by a lot of the senior class, they had this like belief that we were going to win the national championship before we even started that postseason tournament. Like it was like the power of belief in the team was insane, and it's like everybody else on the team had no choice but to like be on board or not. So like if you don't believe, then you're not with us. So like it's like, okay, right, we believe and we'll do whatever we can to help make this work and be as successful as we can. And all of a sudden we're in the final playing oh my gosh, who did we beat? West Virginia, was it? I think. And yeah, I remember coming on in and out, like, because obviously you can come in and come out, go back in again. That's crazy. As a winger or something. Again, I still have no even recollection of where I was playing and how I even managed to play as a winger. I don't give myself any credit, but still. And yeah, it was amazing. Just like complete disbelief that, well, I say we had the belief, but ultimately when we'd won, I'm like, no way. No, we actually did do it. It was crazy.
There's belief, and then there's actually executing and then living through that of emotions. And also NCAA sports, for those who are not familiar, that is intense. That athletes, that's the second full-time job alongside playing your sports. Add in the layer that you had mentioned that USC is a well-regarded institution academically too. There's all of these factors that you have to put into if you're gonna commit to doing something like this. And I really appreciate you sharing. A lot of people, they talk about, oh, I did Litz and the Lamb, and you're in LA still and you're living this style, and oftentimes you get all of the gear and you get all of this stuff, you're treated like celebrities. But then when do you talk about the adjustment period of okay, because you played WSL and you have, you're from England and, you are such a tough player, but then that translates completely different to the American college system than if you were just to, stay in your own backyard. But because you had that dream, that relentless pursuit of that dream. And also, this may sound super nerdy, but I love the fact that you were like looking into the system like from an early age. I think that's just like so cool. Because I'm a very similar way. Like I find something, I go down that rabbit hole, and then you just like end up chasing it. Great. Just talking about, like, you talked about the facilities and you talked about all the other stuff, but so you're expected to train to the highest level. You're expected to catch on to it. But then going into the classroom, that's another story. because again, USC is so well renowned for that. What did you study?
So this is the thing. I went to USC knowing that I wanted to be at like the top level I could in football, but also academically. But I never dreamt, even when I was young, never dreamt of being a professional footballer, even when I went to USC. So I took human biology because I wanted to do the pre-med route. Because if I didn't go to the US, I was studying in the UK, like with my A levels. I took biology, chemistry, and sports science because I wanted to go to, like, if I didn't go to the US, if it didn't work out, I would have tried to have gone to medical school in the UK. But obviously, well, I think you need all A's. I think yeah, I was devastated. I got like A star, A, and then I got a B. Imagine. It's like not even bad, but obviously it wasn't, I got a B in chemistry and I needed an A in chemistry to go to medical school. So I was like, okay, thank goodness I'm going to the US. So I go to the US. I'm like, okay, I'll go the pre-med route. The only thing I've really been interested in, the two things, even when I was a kid, I was like in primary school, so at 10, and they would always ask like what do you want to be when you're older or whatever, and I never really knew. I just knew that I wanted to help people, and the only thing I was interested in was a human body. So I put those two things together and I was like, oh, okay, medical school. Not knowing that like I could, and I guess I'll get to this, but like I've learnt now through my journey is the best way you can help somebody is by being yourself. And funnily enough, like when I say I'm interested in the human body, I'm still fascinated physically by the human body, but also like the capabilities we have, like mind, body, soul, everything. So those two things that I felt when I was like 10 years old, I'm still kind of like living now, but I've been able to like carve out my own path and been able to do those things rather than being like, okay, I'm going to put those two things together and I have to be a doctor. Like, which now for me, it's just like not something that I would consider doing. But anyway, when I went to the USC, I was like, yeah, that will be the route. And yeah, I really enjoyed my major. I enjoyed my classes, but obviously in the US, you have to take like, I had to take a language, I had to take French, I had to take math, I had to take, my first class was a general education class that was called like urban gangs in LA. So my first class in summer school was learning. I remember the I remember the professor putting up a map of LA and like putting like different markers of where each gang is based, like around my university. And I'm like a little like young innocent, UK small town girl coming like my first class in the US, and it's like, okay, these are all the gangs are based around the USC, so don't walk down this street and don't walk. I'm like, okay, been thrown in at the deep end.
Oh my goodness, that's quite some introduction to LA. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's insane. I didn't know they
Yeah.
actually taught that.
Yeah, I'm sure, and that's the thing. Like, it was even that ingrained in my memory that I remember the name of the class, Urban Gangs in LA.
Yeah, you're not gonna forget that anytime soon,
Yeah,
probably.
right.
Oh
Oh,
my God, wow, that's so you've got all of that, and you said you landed and you're figuring out what this is all kind of gonna look like, and I wanted to just circle back to something that you said earlier because I just find it really interesting, and you're not the first person to have talked about it, but just that competitiveness that Americans have, and a lot of times, well, depending on who you talk to, I think some people may say that's not great, and then there's some who, people like yourself. I know Lucy Bronze also said the same thing. She wanted to be on that same level as like Tobin Heath and those women at University of North Carolina, but because winning is a mentality, and the Americans just put that kind of onto overdrive. But I think in a way it does help you succeed, and it can help you become the best version of yourself if you know how to manage that. And so curious is, when you're doing all this stuff and you're believing in your team, you believe in yourself. Could you give us a bit of an insight as to what being your time management and life as a student athlete is like, in case people are interested in possibly pursuing this?
yeah. I was always, when I was younger, I was always very like independent. Like I wasn't one of those kids where my parents had to be like, you need to study now, you need to wake up. I was pretty good at that anyway. But when I went to the US, so I'm like 17, turning 18, and I go, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, you have to be up at 6 and we have training at 7. And if you want any like treatment beforehand, or if you want a foam roll, you're going to have to go in and make sure you're on time. And then as soon as you finish, you have to go from the field and go to the gym. And then when you go to the gym, and everything's very detail oriented, it's not just like, oh, we're going to the gym, like these are the exercises, do them. No. I mean, I had, and I still have, a deep level of respect and love for my strength and conditioning coach at USC. Her name's Kelly Dormandy. I still speak to her every so often, but she was like, not in a bad way, but like military, like to the point of she was talking about that competitiveness. She was competitive, and she took her job very seriously, and she took her job seriously because she cared so much about making us better and disciplined. So like we would finish training, go straight to the gym, get a bit of it was like a jello, you guys call it like jello, like a jello shot thing, like that had like, what did it have, like collagen or something in?
Yeah.
And then, right? Yeah, we say
Yeah, I
jelly,
know
but
what
you
you're
guys
talking
say jello. Yeah, those things. And then we'll get into the gym and we're doing like bear crawls, which are like pretty much like you're on like your hands and knees, but your knees are off the floor, and you're like your left hand goes forward and your right foot goes forward. But we had to do everything like at the same time. So our coach would be like, left, right. Like it was kind of like military, but you become so like there's such a big attention to detail that then becomes like in you. So like you hit the line. If you don't hit the line, everybody runs again. If you slow down before the line, we go again. If you've moved the wrong hand or the wrong leg, we're all going again. So it's not about just like, sure, it sounds kind of intense, but it does train you to be like disciplined. It really does. And because everybody else on the team, you're all suffering, but you're all depending on one another, because if one of you messes up, everybody has to do it. And I like that wasn't necessarily so hard for me, again, because I've always been pretty disciplined as I grew up. Like it was easy for me to push myself in a training session than it would be to do like recovery. I was always that person that was like wanting to do something physical, to exert myself. And I know that the Americans are kind of like that. Everything's like I said, go hard or go home. So yeah, I would wake up, we'll have training. It was like 7 to 11, and then classes would start at 11. So normally we'd finish training by 10, then you shower, you go upstairs, and there's an athlete restaurant, which was really nice. So where like you'd meet other athletes from different teams. You have breakfast. I'd always have the same thing, same omelette. You make you a smoothie. Gosh, it was so, oh my gosh, it was so good. Now I think about it, like, oh, one of the, and I don't speak about these experiences very often, so it's really nice, even though it was, like, I graduated in 2019, so it's a while ago, but it was such a pivotal part of my career. And that actually going to the US kept me in football, because at the time I was losing love for football. So that, like, reignited me again. Yeah. And then, yeah, I would just have classes after 11. Sometimes I would have a bit of a break. Like my last semester, I only had one class. I had class from 11 to 11:50, and the rest of the day was free. It was the best thing ever. But sometimes you could have class from like 6 to 8, sometimes like in the evening. But it was just nice. Like you're just living your own little life. You get to train. You get to have a good education. You get to walk around a beautiful campus, be in a beautiful city. Like I was so blessed and lucky. And even when some people, like when I was at Leicester, there were some young girls who were like, I'm considering going to the US. And from my experience, I always say, like, from my own experience, I can only speak so highly of it. But I like to speak to young girls that come and speak to me and say, I want to go to the US. I like to sit with them and be like, but okay, what do you want out of it? Where would you prefer to go? Because it's like, I can be like, yes, go, but I'm saying go based on my experience. I want somebody to go knowing it's the right thing for them. And obviously I went to a school where I did have family close, and that helped a lot in case I wanted to be away from university life. I was also in a big city, which was nice, because I know there's some colleges that some girls have gone to and they haven't enjoyed it because there wasn't maybe a lot of social life, like they're in a different state and it was a smaller school and the experience is completely different. But I mean, for the experience, I can only speak so highly of my experience, and not only that, but how it encourages you to grow up quickly and to learn things, put yourself out, like get yourself out of your comfort zone and meet different people and challenge yourself to be almost to survive alone. Yeah, I know now, like I was shy as a kid, like lacked so much confidence, and I still do now. I lack confidence, but I'm a lot more confident speaking to people, and that really started from having to do things like that, like go to the US by myself when I was so young. So yeah, it's an incredible experience.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that. And I think it's so important that when, because I've spoken to a lot of international athletes from around the world and, and as someone who's moved abroad twice as an adult in my life, you're right. Like I feel like you grow up even more when you move. I mean, it's
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you can have researched the place as well as you can. You can know people, but at the same time, there's still that shock, even though people might not anticipate
Yeah.
there's that shock. There is. And I think it's so important that we speak about that because it can be easy for you, the fact that you're willing to chat to girls and young women and be an ambassador for that and be like, hey, I'm willing to talk to you. First of all, that's huge. And if, and I know that may not be everybody's thing, but emphasizing that importance of being able to be that person that is not only willing to share their experiences, because that's valuable in and of itself, but then also being honest about that. Because you're right, there's that distinction between, I want you to go, but have my experience. But there's also being that realistic factor. It's a double-edged sword. There's heaps of schools in the U.S. and you could fulfill your dream theoretically of playing college sports. But at the same time, those experiences are going to vary drastically.
Yeah.
So you have to be realistic about that. I'm sure the girls appreciate having someone like you that they can chat to. So
Yeah, I hope
talking
so.
about, yeah, I'm sure they do. Coming home, I'm sure you played for Leicester and all of these things. So you were back in the community. Did you get a lot of kind of questions or, were people kind of flocking to you because they knew you had that experience?
Um, yeah, I'm just thinking like it was a lot of like the young girls who end up like playing in the academy that were trained with us when I was at Leicester that would ask me a lot of questions. In general, I think people who never really had an interest in going to the US, they almost like didn't really show a lot of interest in knowing about my experience, which was fine. I never really like questioned that or anything. But I think it was easy for people to tell about my experience in the US based on how I was when I first had to transition about coming home. Because when I first joined Leicester, we were in the championship and it was like I've come from somewhere that is more professional than many professional environments, So obviously it's college, but I know it's more professional than many professional environments in women's football. So imagine, like I'm telling you, I had my strength coach who's like almost military with some things. Like I said, it's not a bad thing. I took it as a really good thing, like how it taught me to be disciplined and intentional with everything that I did. But I come back and I'm playing in the championship with Leicester. And a lot of the girls haven't been out, haven't, they might have been through professional setups, but we'd had completely different experiences. And that's not good or bad, it was just different. So, like, my standards were up here and my expectations followed, which also is on me because I had to remember where I was going. But there was part of me where, if we're doing rondos and the ball's going out, like if we're doing a little passing thing, I remember doing stuff in training where the ball would go outside of like the square and people would like carry on. And for me, like, I know it sounds so stupid, but it was like, in the US, if the ball goes out, something goes over the line, like that's it, that's the end. You don't, and there's no cheating. Oh my gosh, that's a big thing for me. Like I'm so competitive, but I would much rather lose than cheat to win. And like some of the girls were like, "Oh no, we scored this or we did that many passes, but they didn't," and I would be fuming. Honestly, I'd be so angry. I'm like, oh, it's funny now I'm thinking about this because I'm way more like how people who know me now, I'm just like almost seem careless with some things. Like I let go of way more than what I used to. But there I would be like hung up on it, and I would get so angry, like that my fury in training was actually not nice to experience, and I know it wasn't nice for other girls to witness. And I remember at the time some people were talking to me like Ash, you can't just come here and expect that it's going to be and they were right. It's like I can't just expect that. I'm going to a championship where a lot of the time, like everything was funded by the family that owned the club. Like it was hard, like and I say hard not for me but for them, just to be able to like get us facilities, being able to like, so a lot of the girls are semi-professional when I first joined, so they're like trying to come from their work straight to training, and then they have me like it's actually, I've not thought about this, but it's actually quite hard to think about now, where I'm like, some of these girls have just had a long day probably in an office, and they come to training, and then they have me being like, be better, like all they want is just to play football, like for them it's just a release, but I took everything so seriously, when I couldn't necessarily have changed that because it was just from my experiences, but I do feel bad that like I was putting my expectation on other people based on my own experiences, which it was like two like worlds colliding in different ways, because all of our experiences were so different. But then, and now, I mean, I know we got promoted. Yeah, we got promoted that first season. There was COVID, and that season after we got promoted, went into the WSL, and then surely enough, like things became more professional, and when that kind of allowed me to breathe a little bit and not feel like I had to. I guess it was like me trying to take control, which wasn't healthy, but all part of the journey, I guess.
Well, because you said you come from this experience now for 4 years where you have this, the expectation is so insanely different in terms of how much you're training, what you've got to do during that training. And I think that's the level that England's teams aspire to be at. And now we're seeing the maturity of the WSL. I'm so, London City Lionesses, like I'm sure that's, they're probably them and Arsenal and Chelsea. Like, I mean, they're leading the charge here. And so we're seeing that now, but I can imagine it would be quite a jump because the lifestyles are very different compared to what you just came from. But at the same time, you're coming together because you want to achieve a common goal, and you all want to play football because it's a wonderful sport and it's what you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going on to internationally, legend. So you represent the Nigeria Super Falcons. And so first of all, I want to congratulate you on the 2025 WAFCON trophy. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So you only started representing Nigeria a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But that includes the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. And so I was living down there at the time, so I actually got to attend some matches. I wasn't in Australia, but I watched all of them. And
wow.
Just, it was so cool, like seeing that event. And I can only imagine what the experience was like for you guys. You're playing for Nigeria, and from what I've seen on your socials and also all the fans of the team, you are just so beloved. And so how, even though you didn't necessarily grow up there, how does it feel to represent Nigeria and to play with that group of women?
You see my smile? I literally,
I love that.
Every time honestly, just hear me.
Oh, they should put the video for it in.
Right. Honestly, it's something that's beyond words, because I've always felt a little bit different in football. Like what football has meant to me, my aspirations in football has not been like, I guess like the typical footballer. It's been like the driver for like self-discovery football has, and I know that has been the case for many people, but like joining the Super Falcons was just like, I want to know more about myself. I want to know more about my heritage, more about the heritage of my family, and to connect to parts of myself that I couldn't attribute to anywhere else. Like there is this, and I said this already, but like when I was a kid, I didn't have to be pushed by anyone. It was almost like my parents had to be like, Ash, stop studying, or Ash, stop training, or give yourself a break, or whatever. Like it was just in me just to like work hard. And I really found that when I joined the Super Falcons, like it's like those girls that I get to play with, it's like there is no complain. It's like, even though sometimes the complaints can be very much warranted, they just don't, because they just are grateful for everything. They work hard. They care about the sisterhood, each other, because we are all just a representation of each other. And obviously when I joined the team, it was a bit of a shock. They were like, how are you Nigerian? You know, you obviously they look at me and they're like, how? And I'm like, yes, I understand. Like, I never took anything offensively because I get it. I completely get it. But then the one thing I always like to speak about is the time when I had my debut. We played against Ivory Coast, and one of the senior players on the team, who's like a big sister to me, her name's Asheligh. She came to me after one of the games, and she probably wouldn't even remember this, but she came to me after one of the games and she was just like, do you know how I know you're Nigerian? I said, how? She was like, from like your fighting spirit on the field. Like, you go on the field and it's like this, and you know how I was talking about this belief that, like when I was with USC, that the seniors just had, where like it didn't matter who came in front of us, like we believe that we could win. And that's like the same when I play with the national team. It's like we could play against teams who are FIFA ranked higher than us, or you know, they have better resources or better just structure in general, but there's never like an excuse for us. We just like, we deal with what we have and we go out and give absolutely everything for the badge, for each other, for the country. And it's just like, I feel so grateful. Honestly, I feel so grateful that I can be a part of it, because if I feel like I am them and they are me, you know, like there's no separation between who we are and what we represent. And sure, honestly, like it's hard. I mean, now, like I said, I'm feeling a little bit sick and I know I'm going to have to travel. And traveling in Africa, I'm telling you, it's not easy. So having to travel to Togo and Nigeria, it's going to be tiring, but I'm so looking forward to going back. Like, sometimes, I'll be honest, before, like I would, every time I went to Nigeria, I'd get sick every single time, and usually like a stomach bug. I've had salmonella, I've had gastroenteritis, I've had from going. It has been so difficult sometimes, and all the girls know me to have a like sensitive stomach out there, so they're always like, don't eat this, don't eat this. I don't have a Nigerian stomach. I might be Nigerian, but I do not have a Nigerian stomach. I have a very sensitive British stomach. But yeah, I'm gonna go out there. And I've not been back since winning AFCON, obviously in the summer. So I got to experience Nigeria in a different way. Every time I've been to Nigeria, I've gone just to play and that's it. But obviously when we won AFCON, we had a whole week of celebrations. Like every day we're going around Abuja, we're going around Lagos, we're meeting different people. And I got to experience a different side to Nigeria, which now I feel even more connected to. So I'm actually so looking forward to just going back and being around like the girls, the country, the energy of the place again. And you know, when I was saying like when I was in the US, I liked USC because around USC it was kind of rugged, and that's how I feel in Nigeria. Like I grew up kind of rugged. It was just like I used to run with tires like around my waist with my dad. I used to run up hills with ankle weights. Like run. My dad got permission from a farmer for us to use like this really steep field, like it had a big hill and it had sheep in it, and he got permission from the farmer for me to be able to run up and down like with ankle weights on my ankle. Sounds like torture, but I used to love it. So yeah, like I go to Nigeria and it's the same. Like you should see how some of my teammates, how they grew up training. Like it's just a rugged mentality where you're just like, they're training in the sand, jumping over tires and stuff. And I love to be a part of that, because again, there's like no excuses. It's just like hard work, gratitude, like they're so grateful, and just representing something bigger than ourselves is something that, yeah, I will never be able to put into words. But like I said, as soon as you started speaking about it, I just smiled, because it's just, I feel it in my heart. I really do.
That's beautiful. And representing your country is the greatest honor. And I had a friend who, she used to play for her national team in her sport, and she said, you know, when it comes to international sport, it's logos off, flags up. Focus goes elsewhere, and it's, you know, you're bonded by that sisterhood. By, you know, what always struck me is watching you guys play was never give up. And you guys, just the joy around each other, and you guys go hard. We're never gonna, it was never gonna be a cakewalk, but you were always just gonna be you guys are smiling, you guys are the joy. And I was like, that's what this should be. But then you guys step out on the pitch and it's like, whoa. And always say, Nigeria is one to watch. And so it's wonderful to, just watch that unfold. I know as a fan at least. And so, you're talking about, you shared that you grew up in a different circumstances in terms of football and resources and training look different for you than it would for your teammates. And so have you noticed, as you know, you've only been physically there a couple of times, but in terms of women and girls football, you and your teammates, kind of in your eyes, how do you see yourselves helping grow the game? And are you guys starting to see kind of some of that growth on the ground and grassroots because of what you've accomplished?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, this is since winning WAFCON, that has been like the goal of ours. Even during WAFCON, we were having meetings as players about what we want like our legacy to be, because obviously when you win something, it's very like short term. Like people will remember that you won something, but really like nobody's holding on to that. It's like, okay, now what? And how can we make it easier for those who want to be in our position? Because a lot of the girls, and I can't even speak about this because I've not experienced it, but the girls who grew up playing in Nigeria, like it's tough, like they don't get the opportunities maybe that like I had, and it is just like at times dog eat dog. Like you just have to do as much as you can to be able to be in a position where you are seen, and then you get to try and play in the national team. And for a lot of them, they want to play in the national team so that they can go and have experiences elsewhere, abroad, somewhere, and make a living for themselves. So everything is, and a lot of them, they then become like the breadwinner of the family, so they have to support their family. Like it's a lot of responsibility that's put on their shoulders. And yeah, I think like you can see the passion in a lot of the girls, like when we're talking about the legacy after winning AFCON. And this is why I speak so highly of our captain, Rasheedat Ajibade. She's now at PSG, but she's somebody that I look up to a lot. And I just feel grateful that I get to be on a team, not only with how she plays, what she is able to like give of herself for the sake of the team. It's just huge. I'll never be able to. There needs to be a book. One day, Rash has to write a book about herself, or somebody has to write a book about her. Maybe I will. But yeah, she was the one who was like the catalyst for everything we're trying to do now. I mean, some things are still in the works, so like I can't really go into details, but we're trying to. Like I'll give you an example of one thing. We obviously like when we were trying to win WAFCON, we called it Mission X, which meant like trying to win the 10th title, because Nigeria have won it 9 times before, so it was like our mission to win mission 10 times. So when we won, it was like having a Mission X project, and I don't know how she managed to do this, but she got the details of every single grassroots club in Nigeria. Nigeria is huge. There's over 200 million people in Nigeria, and she got the contact of every grassroots club, and we are like distributing packages with like equipment for each team, so like cones, ladders, bibs, and then there's like a little poster from us in it for each team that just kind of like says that this is our gift to them, because like again we're like all the same, like they are us and we are them, and we want them to have that motivation to keep pushing, and we want to be able to give something back to them. And she, honestly, Rash was the one who started all of this. I mean, we're on a group and there's constantly updates on who's received the packages, and I get videos every so often of like what coaches have received them and stuff like that. But the fact that like, yes, she's had help with some people, but the fact that like one person, because some of us on the team have tried to like support her, but really like she'll be like, I'm so grateful, but I'm like, I've not done anything really. Like a lot of us are not like, she's done all the work herself, just to be able to again leave something behind after a win, and now we're going obviously in 2 days, well, less than 2 days. I literally have tonight and then I fly, but now we're on the quest for going towards the next major tournament, which is AFCON, and then it will be the same thing. But yeah, we have so many other things in the pipeline right now about trying to yeah, just have like an impact, a lasting impact from winning something.
Yeah, which is phenomenal. The legacy, obviously, on the pitch is something that you guys all have, and it will continue to live on. Your names are in those history books forever. But at the same time, being able to see something like what she's doing unfold is, and even getting to play a part in that, I feel like that's just that's a side of sport that a lot of people don't get to see, and like people need to know more about it because
Mm-hmm.
it's great work, and
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So and again, one of the things that I thought about you is that you're always you're either always talking to somebody or giving back. So you are kind of become one of those people that's been kind of gets center for that. Um, but you're doing that outside of football as well. And so I wanted to ask you about your Heartspoken account on Instagram because that there,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I just think because there's also that side of you. And so I wanted to bring to light kind of what you're doing there and yeah, just kind of take us the backstory and through it.
Yeah, I've never spoken about this actually, but it excites me because it's a big part of me that I want to be able to speak about, but obviously we know how social media works and most people just expect or want certain kind of content, which I feel like I'm almost lying if I'm not giving people more of like who I am and what I believe in.
Yeah.
So this I started this page when I had my surgery on my Achilles last year in the summer. And I always kept saying like I want to be able to write a book one day. And then my first post on that account, I was like I'm not arty at all. I wish I was like creative, but I'm not. But I just copied, like I sketched with a pencil, like a heart, like a physical heart. And then I like just, and I don't know how I managed to do this, but I just drew like almost like roots of the heart. Um, like it was being stuck in the ground. And then somehow it made it look like almost like the heart always looked like a person's head and the roots looked like a neck in a way, but also it was a representation of the heart being rooted in truth, in rooted in the ground. And that's what I meant by heartspoken, is like I want to be able to share things that on my journey I've started to learn way more about myself, like beyond the footballer, beyond any like identity titles. I've learned in great ways and in really tough ways about who I am, what I care about, and what the core of me is meant to be here for. I don't know how to describe it necessarily, but like I want to be able to talk about things and share things that sometimes I feel deeply that I know other people feel too, but they just haven't been able to verbalize it or maybe don't feel confident enough to say. But I want to know, like, and I said this at the start of the podcast, that I always want people to know that like the root of everything, we're all the same. Like I believe that we all have unique gifts and we're all different in our own way in the sense of what we can bring to other people and society, but at the root of everything, at our core as human beings, I think we all deep down want the same thing. We want to feel valued, we want to feel loved, we want to feel supported, we want to feel championed at times. And yeah, going through like my life journey, I mean, I've been through times of like being completely alone, pushing people away. Oh, there's so many things that it seems separate to like football, but it's like part of me where I know that to be the best and most authentic version of myself to people, I have to go into who I am. And I think now, like in like let's say on social media and stuff, people call it like maybe shadow work, and that means like looking at parts of yourself that we often in life we choose to distract or ignore ourselves from. So like football is a great release, but it's also a distraction from ourselves at the same time. And when I went through my surgery, I had 3 months. I had a bit of time where I was surrounded by people, but I went to a different country. I went to Doha, to Qatar, alone, well, somebody came with my surgery, but I had big periods of time in a different country alone, rehabbing, to sit with myself with no distractions whatsoever and to confront myself. So when I got to do that, I got to really know how I felt about certain things in life, like things that I care about. And I just started writing random things, and I was like, this page is not about me having an intention of like, I want to get this across. It was just like, sometimes when people journal, it's literally like that. Like, I'm just maybe journaling about something, about life, about friends, about family, about hardships, about, my friend calls them glimmers. Like, glimmers are little moments in your day that you just feel really grateful for. Just writing them. And it may be like, that account is not about trying to hit thousands of people. It's about trying to hit people who are meant to be drawn to the page and might get some kind of, it's not even about inspiration, it's just feeling like a level of understanding. Like, they might think something that I might think that they wouldn't expect, and they all of a sudden they feel connected to it, or known, or understood, just for a second. Exactly, validated is the word. And that's all it is, really. I think one day I would love to, like, it might take a couple of years, but put all the posts like together, and maybe I could make the book. I realized after, I was like, maybe I could make the book from these posts, like almost like loads of different, almost like poems or something that come together. But I don't know, for now it's just kind of my mind just bringing different things together and just putting it in one place. But yeah, it's so nice to speak about, because I've gone from speaking to you right now about who I was growing up, and everything was about working really hard, like pushing myself to the max, to now being in a place where, like, sometimes that's not always healthy. Like, the healthy thing is actually to let go, to allow yourself to do less, to just be, to do almost like nothing at all. And I've learned that by doing less, it's helped me become a better person and a better football player, because my body is thanking me for it, because my body, like, my joints have been overworked for too long and too hard, too young. But I wouldn't have changed anything, but my body's feeling it now, so I have to listen to it. So that page really is just about listening to mind, body and soul, and trying to just stay in line with that.
That is amazing. Because I found that account and I know I followed it because it's something that it definitely speaks to me. And I'm
Nice.
also very much a believer of, you're talking about like the glimmers of every day, just write those down. There was another gal that I know and I've spoken to, and she calls it the 1%. So she's like, what is that 1% in your day? 99% of it could be absolute crap, but is that 1%? What is that? And can you acknowledge it? And I think it is such a process to try and acknowledge that. Like, it's not just going to come to you right away. And I feel like everything else you do in life, sitting with those emotions and understanding, like, all right, so like this is the shadow work that's a great, love that term for it. Like, sitting with that and actually working through it, that's a project in and of itself, but it's so worth it. And you'll end up being a better person for it. So it's great work. And conscious time, but I did want to just quickly ask you, you're a champion off the field for various organizations, and you talked a lot about your values. And so I just was wondering, is that work that you're doing off the field, can you just tell us about some of those organizations that you're an ambassador for, and kind of what you hope to do that? And then also, how can we, as people of sport and fans, support you?
No, it's a good question. So again, all of this is funny because we've gone from speaking about Heartspoken, and that happened when all of that started when I was in Doha last year. And then I also had time to think about, what I really cared about. Like, I'd never watched movies, and during this time I had time to watch movies, and I watched one movie that, sometimes you can watch something that it hits you to your core so much that, like, it cannot be ignored. And I watched this movie. It was called The Sound of Freedom, and it was about human trafficking. And at the time, I was so, like, deeply upset watching it that it was upsetting me so much that I had to, like, pause it and leave the room, and I wanted to turn it off. And I was like, wait, Ash, like, you have the privilege right now to be able to turn this off and act like this doesn't actually exist in the world, because it like I'm just watching a movie and I can feel upset and I can turn it off and I make myself feel better. But the reality is, like, this stuff exists, and now that I've been a part of Mission 89, which is one of the organizations I'm an ambassador for, which fights against sports trafficking, I've learned through being involved with them, like, how prevalent of an issue just human trafficking is in general, but obviously this is more specific to sports trafficking. So when I watched this movie, I was like, no, I can't just like turn this off. I sat through the rest of the movie, even though I didn't really want to. It wasn't enjoyable whatsoever. And then I finished the movie and I was like, no way can I. And it's not like somebody like just myself. I'm not gonna like drastically change this issue, but I felt like I had this responsibility to use my platform to speak about this, because I don't see many people that do. So I was like, okay, if I can speak about it, maybe it could educate other people. And since then, like since joining the organization, and I post things here and there with them, like I have had people, like even players, like especially female players, that have reached out to me wanting to know more. Even when like I speak on a podcast or whatever, and I get questions, which this is the whole point, where like I can discuss something that is so prevalent. Like it really is, like, trafficking is the second most profitable business that exists in the world. And imagine something that is brings in so much money is something that is so inhumane, and it's this like second. So I'm thinking, like, if that is the case, why on earth is this not spoken about or discussed or fought against? Like, it's just, and I know that's why like the media in general would choose what they want to share and what they don't want to share. So like I get to use my own voice to speak about things, and it reaches the people that it's again meant to reach to. But yeah, I'm really, really passionate about being part of Mission 89. I mean, I joined not really knowing anything, and that's the thing. Like, I've been to different conferences, and I have spoken. Like, I went to Switzerland before AFCON. Literally, it was, we went to Portugal for a friendly game, and 2 days before I was in Switzerland speaking at the UN alongside Mission 89 about sports trafficking. And I'm speaking, again, I go there, and I can't, put on this, like, false... I sat in the UN, and I'm like... I know I am just a footballer. Like, I can't use the words that some other people use and talk about the technical terms. I'm like, but I am here just because I know that I'm lucky to be in the position that I am, to have had the opportunities and the accessibility and the safety within football that I've had. But I know that's just not the case for so many people. And it's not like my voice is going to change so much. But if I speak about it as a footballer who doesn't necessarily, I don't have to speak about it because I'm fine, but I know that when I say we are all the same, I could have been somebody else, and my younger brother or younger sister could have been that person. Like, it could have been any of us. So if I have the chance to use my platform to talk about the stuff that is so important and impacts people's livelihood, literally it's like life or death, why would I not communicate about it, even if I don't necessarily know enough? But that's the thing, it's nice because I know that I'm passionate about it, but at the same time I'm learning more being a part of the organization.
That is amazing. It's so nice to see when people and athletes can use their platforms for good. There is a position of influence that you've got, and you're learning along the way too, but you're dedicated to sharing the message because it is important, and it's something that does need to be talked about more. And even having one person like yourself who's helping talk about it can make all the difference. So there's ways that we can support that and support you doing that work. I can link that in the show notes below, and we can find ways to help support the work that you're doing and support the cause, because that is worthy of talking about.
Appreciate that. I mean, initially I think the most important thing is just got a delivery of a juice, sorry. Pause. Sorry. So the biggest thing really is Mission 89, the organization itself, whether it's on Instagram, website, just being able to go on Mission 89's platforms and just to be able to go through certain things. Because recently there's been a big global like thematic report that's just been released. It's like over 100 pages. So I know that's not like, it's not necessarily attractive for people who are not aware and don't necessarily want to read through a big report. You can just go on to things that may be a bit more easy to the eye. So I've done a couple of videos that I'm more than happy to like share. Going on Mission 89's Instagram is another. I think they also have a Twitter account. I'm not really on Twitter, so I don't see that so much. But even just going on their website is enough just to get an idea. And I think it wouldn't take somebody long to go on those platforms and just like you read a couple of things, just some of the facts. Like I think it was last year that over 15,000 young people were trafficked from West Africa alone just last year. So it's like as soon as you hear something like facts like that, it's just like shocking, so then I think for most people, and it's what happened to me when I learn about things like this, I'm like, I want to know more, and I want to know then how to help. I mean, I'm trying to organise something at the minute where I go to, it's been in the pipeline all year really, but it's just finding the time because the football schedule's so busy, but to go along to my club and to run some football sessions in Nigeria and then do some workshops in the afternoon where Mission 89 can come and educate like the kids and their parents on the risks of sports trafficking. So yeah, that's the next thing. I'm hoping we can get that underway hopefully this year, by the end of this year. So yeah, it's just speaking about it more, going on the platforms, even like if people, the best way to reach out to me, I'm trying to think, like my dad, funnily enough, my dad is my agent, so, and he enjoys being able to speak to people about what I care about. So even if people, they reach out to my dad and have questions, I'm more than happy to share information. That's fine.
I also just want to give a quick shout out to your dad, Tim, who was a whiz and very helpful in helping orchestrate this episode today. So thank you, Tim. But yeah, so thank you for sharing that, Ash.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, this could go on for much longer, but I know you've got a whole other day and you leave tomorrow. So thank you so much again for joining. It means so much. And I know people will be super inspired to hear your story and everything. So thank you again.
Thank you. No, I've really enjoyed it. And I've really enjoyed speaking about things that I don't often get to speak about on podcasts, So like even going back to USC days or even speaking about Heartspoken, I appreciate that you're interested in that. So thank you for that.
Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the Passport Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you learned something new. If you want more information about the show, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and X, which is linked in the show notes. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get the latest pod. And if you feel inclined, please feel free to leave a review so that this podcast reaches more listeners. Thank you for coming on this journey, and I'll speak with you soon.